My name is Steve Bertrand, and I am the Assistant Director here at the Kankakee Public Library. And we have a very special guest with us tonight. Her name is Mrs. Christina Saller, and she has had a very eventful life. And one of my coworkers was helping her find a book in the library one day, and she started relating a few stories to her. And when Allison, my coworker, told me about it, my first thought was, we have to have her for a program. And she was kind enough to come in today and do this program. Mrs. Saller was born in Germany in 1928. Is that right? I hope I'm not being mean by giving away your age.
No, no.
And her youth was spent in Dresden. And as many of you may already know, there was a terrible bombing in Dresden where the city was burnt largely to the ground, and Mrs. Saller was there that terrible day and has had some amazing experiences. She also grew up in Germany during the Nazi regime, and has kind of a common person's first-hand knowledge of what it was like to live in a country under totalitarian government. And the way that we decided to format this is I'm going to ask her some questions. It's going to be kind of an interview style, and she's going to just relate some of the stories on the questions that I ask. I've also put in some photographs to be projected up on the screen. Some are personal photographs of Mrs. Saller, and some of them are ones that I've gotten from books and so forth that show what happened to Dresden. So that's what we're going to do. I'm hoping maybe we'll have a little bit of extra time to maybe take some questions from the audience as well, if Mrs. Saller would like to do that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and I'd like everyone to welcome Mrs. Saller.
Thank you all for coming, and I really will try my best to come to the, oh, see there? Yes. Because I'm mixed up with my two languages. I mean, I speak English, I speak German. It doesn't matter. And so whoever has a question on me or for me can do it in German or in English. It doesn't matter. Okay?
If we have any German speakers.
Yeah, with this gentleman over here. Yeah, you, okay. So if you have any questions.
I don't have to say, I can say most of
Okay, that's good. That's good enough for me. So, well, anyway, I'm happy to see you all. I didn't expect so many that would come to me. You know, I mean, I am a nobody.
you're somebody.
So, I really like to converse with you. Whoever has a question.
When did you come to the United States?
In 53.
And how did that all, what led up to capital?
Oh, well, I tell you, I was born in 28, in Dresden. Across the bridge, you know, if you oh, here.
Well, you know.
See, okay.
Yeah, you can turn the lights off and we'd be able to see a little better.
Yeah.
I even put a circle around it for you.
Oh, thank you. Do you have one of them lipsticks?
No, we don't have a pointer.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's right there with the circle around it.
Okay. Well, see, here, this is Dresden. And this is the Elbe River. It goes from Czechoslovakia all the way up here to Hamburg. Hamburg is when it goes into the North Sea. And I lived here in just about in this neighborhood where I spent my youth, my childhood, and later on actually it was until 1945 that I lived in this neighborhood here. And this here was my birthplace. Then later on, since my husband was in the army, we went close to Frankfurt. One of my girls was born in Frankfurt, in the military hospital in Frankfurt. So then we went from there, we went to Bavaria. We went to Munich, we went to Passau, we went to Bad Reichenhall, and Bad Tölz, and now in Mittenwald. Everything is right in Austria. No, not Austria, Bavaria.
Bavaria, right.
And then we were so close to Austria, and we went sightseeing to Salzburg. Salzburg is a beautiful town, and we used to go there just to drink coffee. And
also,
yeah, that was really nice. And
here is Dresden itself.
oh yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
what part of the city did you live in?
See here? This here, that's where I was born.
Okay.
And actually, my mother, I was born there.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had a store in Loschwitz. She was making hats and, you know, like fur coats,
Mm-hmm.
fur jackets, hats. She made anything with hats.
Mm-hmm.
So then after this, we went into Johannstadt. That's when I went to school over here.
Okay.
And Blasowitz. Now this was all my, how do you call that?
Neighborhood or?
Neighborhood, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, when I went to high school, I would all the way run into Altstadt.
Okay.
That would be the ältesten Marktplatz.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, all this here was farmed to nothing anymore.
I have.
There is a,
This shows the area that was bombed.
yeah, this
The red area, it was 75% to 100% destroyed, and the orange was like 50 to 75% destroyed.
yeah. So this one here was pretty good.
Uh-huh. Just on the edge.
Yeah, just on the edge. But my mother had her store right in Loschwitz here.
Mm-hmm.
So then, what did we do? And I went to the Bahnhof, train station.
Mm-hmm.
Train station, I think it should be here, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
This is where Dresden, the Bahnhof,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Train station.
Right, right.
That is where I was located
Mhm.
when the air raid came.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit this here. And when I saw it, when I looked out the window, or out of the basement, I saw the whole city, this here, was burning. You couldn't even see a house standing anymore. Everything was fire. And Gruna.
Can everyone hear okay? No? Okay. Do you want to hold the microphone while you're talking? No. Oh, that's all right. There you go.
Air raid.
Hello. Can you understand me now?
Yeah.
Let's move the speaker away from you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I come back to the other places after the war. You know, not after the war, but after the air raid. So, but this is my hometown.
Okay.
And you can change it now?
Okay.
Hold it.
Yeah, hold the microphone up.
Can you?
There you go.
Okay, now I got it.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's
see here.
Is this your mother's?
This is my, yeah, was my mother's store. This here. This all the way around the corner. That's where she was working from early in the morning until late at night. And my father didn't like that at all. But my mother was very energetic. She said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to work. And she made it. And so this I saw 46 years later, after the air raid, because I was not in Germany after the Russians moved in, and since I was an American already at that time, I didn't feel like going into the East. I wanted to stay here in the West. I felt safer. And that's when, 46 years later, that's when I went to my hometown, where I was born.
Could you talk a little bit about your family and what you talked about your mother, but what your father did and your siblings?
All right. My father was a citizen, as naturally. No, he was working for the city hall.
Okay.
He was an inspector.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, he was working too.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say much for him because he only came home at 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And then he probably, you know, he was connected with the Nazi party.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, when he was in it,
mm-hmm.
he was working for the Winterhilfswerk.
Okay.
It meant he was working with the poor people and during the summer, winter nights.
Mm-hmm.
So that was his big help for the German people.
So it was common that anybody who had a government job had to be a member of the party, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, well, it was for his good.
Right,
you know, and for us too.
Mm-hmm.
Because he became a citizen, I mean, how do you say?
A government worker?
That he worked for the government.
Uh-huh.
Now, it wasn't in the government. It was working for the city.
Right.
Because that's what he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he came back, then in 1939, he had to go into the army.
Okay.
And how this is my family.
Mm-hmm.
There is my aunt, or my father, my mother, another sister, old lady.
Mm-hmm.
This is the grandmother, this is the grandmother, and this is me.
Right in the middle?
Right in the middle, yeah. And that was my first day of school. And we had a little just get together.
Okay.
And this was all the family that we had.
Okay.
What year is that? What year is that? That picture?
35.
35?
1935, yeah.
Okay. Very nice.
So.
Okay. We might be able to do the microphone a little easier if you just maybe sat down and we could put it in the holder, because the rest of the picters I don't know if you really need to point to.
No, you know what bothers me is the light.
Yeah, if you sit down here, it would get the light will go around you.
Yeah. Because I don't walk that good.
Yeah. Here you go.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You can go ahead and sit down. Could you tell us a little bit what you remember in 1932 is when Hitler took over? Can you tell me, or 33, right? Can you tell me anything you remember about how your town changed or anything that you saw that was different?
Well, it was not so much difference. It was later on that Hitler came and made his presentation. And then he said to all the people, like I had another sister. So he came to my mother, not Hitler came to my mother. Yeah. But anyway, he said what my plans are for these young people. Right. Especially when after 5 years old, that he would come and draw the people, the young people, into groups. Okay. Especially in the neighborhoods, wherever we were living, he would have his, he would say,
like political leaders or political people?
Yeah, that's about it. And so my mother said that sounded good to her, and so she signed me up for the Kinderschau, because I was only 5 years old then. Okay. So then they took me into groups. Perhaps the group was about 10 people, 10 girls, only girls, no men. And so once a week, in summer we would go over on Saturdays, we would be sports. We would, running or jumping. That would be Saturdays on the summer. But we would meet Wednesday, just for 2 hours.
So it was a youth program.
And my mother said, since she was busy working, she thought that was a good idea. And that is when it came around that Hitler was able to spread,
become popular.
Out of the little thing, it would come back. It would become back. So.
And you were 5 years old at this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 years old.
And so I was until about 6, 7 years old. No, 10 years old. When I started to be young Mädchen. Okay. Young girls. Young girls group. And then we had a little, how do you call it?
A uniform?
A uniform with a, but it was a white blouse, and it was a dark blue skirt, and then we had a scarf around the neck. Okay. But so
it was kind of so it was kind of organized the way the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are kind of organized. So that's what kind of how the parents saw it at that early stage.
Right. Yeah. We didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
We thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. People nowadays have the hindsight of being able to look back and see how it all turned out. But at that point, nobody really knew what was coming ahead.
Yeah.
So it was just a way to get the kids out of the house because you were busy.
Yeah. Okay. It's just about the same what is now.
Oh, yeah. All parents know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing at the point when the bombing occurred? This is in February of 1945. 45 was the 13th, right? 13th. Right. The day before Ash Wednesday, ironically.
Right.
So what were you doing at that moment when the bombing started?
Well, I was waiting for the train to pull in. Okay. Because that was a refugee train coming from Breslau. Okay. Because the Russians came closer and closer. And we even were scared what would expect, what they would do to us, because we heard a lot of bad things.
Yeah, rumors and things.
Yeah. But it worked out pretty good. But so I was taking these kids, 4 children, little ones, and the 2 mothers with me. And then at that time that they went down on the platform, the sirens began to blow.
Okay, the air raid sirens.
Yeah, it was the third stage right away. So we had to hurry, and then they wanted us to go into the bunker.
Okay, bomb shelters.
Bomb shelter
In the train station?
The train station.
Okay.
And I said, no, I don't go in there. I have seen people dying, and they couldn't breathe anymore, nothing.
You had mentioned to me before that you had been in Berlin during an air raid, and somebody had said that?
Yeah, one time. I spent like a weekend with friends from Dresden, and they moved to Berlin.
Okay.
And there we had an air raid in Berlin. And she said this lady said to me, we better go up to that bunker because I don't want you to get hurt down here.
Right.
So that's when I went up to a bunker.
Okay.
And I didn't like it.
Yeah.
You know, but
As a little background, at this point, Dresden was about 500,000 people. I've read, and there was a mass influx of refugees from the east running from the Russians. So there may have been another 100,000, 200,000 people in or around the city.
And nobody knew.
Yeah, nobody knew because they were just coming in and getting shelter wherever they could.
We didn't know how many trains would come in. So we just took whatever came, and we took care of them.
You mentioned to me that as part of your school, you were helping refugees, and that's what brought you to the train station on that particular day?
That happened. That day that they told us to go to the train station, the whole school class. I was in 6th B. And so...
And you're about 16 at this time?
18.
18.
No, not 18.
Yeah.
17.
17, okay.
17. And then I started taking care of the refugees.
The refugees, okay.
Yeah. And that's when all of a sudden the air raid begins. It just came down like one bomb after the other. And it's very discouraging to find out what it means to be in war. It is just...
You talked to me about the Christmas trees. Yeah, when I first talked to Mrs. Saller, she kept mentioning the Christmas trees, and I didn't understand what she was talking about. And then later on, I found out that they were targeting markers for the bombers, and this is an actual picture of them.
Yeah, this is what we saw when we came out of the basement. You know, we came out from the train station, across the street to that house which used to be a hotel. So after that moved, we saw the whole sky was white with these, what we call Christmas trees.
Did you know what they were at the time?
Yeah.
You knew that they were targeting markers like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked to me before about meeting some people, a couple of women and some children in the train station. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Do you recall that? A lady and some children?
Yeah, that's the one that I took off the train.
Right. And some refugees.
Yeah, and we were standing there on the platform. And that's when the air raid started. I mean, first it was only the sirens, you know, and then later on it was the bombings.
Right.
So we were lucky, I was lucky.
Yeah.
That I was able to survive the first attack, and that was the first attack.
Right, there were two.
And at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's when we had the first attack. And if I had, but I wanted to go home. I mean, when I looked out and saw the whole city burning, I mean, it was, I just had to go home, and I forgot about these poor people. Oh yeah.
That's a painting of that an artist did of the city in flames.
And that's the way I saw it.
You told me a story about bringing the family. You didn't want to go down into the bunker, so you went across the street to the hotel.
Right.
And what happened there? Do you recall?
Actually, what we found out was that the bombs would hit. It was a big 5-story hotel.
Okay.
So when the bombs started to fall, we just heard the bombs.
Right.
And then we saw that the glasses were flying, or the trees were, not the trees, but the windows, the doors, everything was destroyed. And then when I looked out the window and saw this, I said, I didn't even say goodbye to these poor people. They
remained in the hotel and you were set off for home.
And I said, I'm going to go to meet. I have to go. And then I went 4 hours through. I didn't have to go through all the fire. I didn't have to go.
Right. So you were up in the upper right at Loschwitz, is that right? And so you had to go around the city because you couldn't go through the red area because it was in flames.
I didn't go that way. I couldn't go that way.
Oh, okay.
I went south.
So you went, south?
South, and then I went
all the way west?
Until I came, but I didn't go all the way to Loschwitz because I just, we moved into this, it's called Bergmannstraße. Okay. And the Bergmannstraße was over there, where it was like brownish on the left side. Okay. Yeah. So that way it came like I had to go. Right, you know? And that's when it took me 4 hours to come. And then I saw my mother, where it says Bruna. I think I saw it over there. But anyway, it was in Bruna where I met my mother and my family. Okay. And what had been the fate of those? Did they survive? Well, we all survived. Because at that time, when it happened, my mother, I told my mother, I said, I hear the bombers are coming. Let's get to the next house that isn't bombed. You know? Yeah. So it's a university building that was burned. Yeah, that's a little bit where I should have gone. But I went the other way. I went around. And all I did was look up in the sky where there was no fire. That was good enough for me. Yeah. And that's why I went home. And I came home okay. And it took you 4 hours to traverse around the whole city. Yeah. And in some of the readings that I've done before our talk, books say that it got to thousands of degrees in the center of the city, and it got so hot that the oxygen gets sucked out of the middle of the city because of it being consumed by the fire. And it's indescribable. I have a. This is a picture of a steel column that was melted by the heat of the flame. So you met your family back at home, and what did you do immediately after that? Do you recall that? Well, we went across the street, and my grandmother's house was at the corner. Okay. And it didn't burn yet. Okay. So we jumped into that one. Okay. We jumped into that basement. Okay. And then we took the how do you say concert? You took shelter, or shelter, and the people had cooked like meat, or not onions, vegetables, and fruit. Everything was in the basement. Okay. So we stole everything. Okay, to survive. But we divided it under the 300 people in the basement. There were 300 people in your basement? One after the other.
So if they found a house that was still standing, they would just try to get into the house in order to get food or whatever they could find.
Yeah.
Was this the next morning, or was it still during the night?
That was still during the night.
Okay.
And then in the morning, we stayed with the whole bunch because there were 300 people.
Okay.
I mean, and I was one of the youngest ones. So we tried to get into these bathtubs.
Okay.
Because that's what we were told.
Right.
To fill up the bathtubs with water. And then when we needed it, we could go into these bathtubs and fill out the buckets. And either we would go upstairs where there was fire.
And put it out.
Or put it out. Or we were in the basement and gave them little by little something to drink, something to eat. So actually it was a good, we were one bunch. It was a good feeling.
You worked together.
That we worked together, that we were able to help each other. And I don't know, war can be very, actually, if that is the right word.
It brings people together. So tragedy brings people together.
Soothing. It's soothing. It means that you have the power, not the power, but still
comfort of other people.
That you have other people being helped. And I thought this was good for the whole situation. That everybody was in the same mess.
Yesterday, when I visited you, I asked you that, you know, these allies and some Americans had dropped bombs on you and nearly killed you and your family, and not 2 or 3 years later, you married one. And I thought that was kind of incredible, that you didn't hold any kind of grudge or any anger towards the British or the Americans for having done this.
No.
Can you explain your personal vision or philosophy about why that is?
Well, I tell you what it is. If you are way on the bottom and you went through nothing but bad things, and you, at least you didn't do anything bad, you know, but you had to go through with it.
Right.
And that way, I was thinking, well, perhaps these guys in the airplanes, they were ordered.
Right.
To do this. They had, you know, they had to do it. And we knew that if Hitler said something, well, we better do it too. You know, it's really weird when you go through that.
Right. When you talked to me last night about it, or yesterday about it, you kind of just talked about how you thought it's just sort of something that happened. And you didn't really, you hadn't decided, because there's a lot of controversy about whether or not it was justified or not justified, or whether it should have happened or not happened. But you don't think in terms like that, whether it's just something that did happen.
You don't do that at all. When you are really involved, when you are on the bottom, you accept everything that comes your way. And you don't say, oh, it should have been, it should have been. It doesn't now. It was me. You know, it probably some people didn't like that. My attitude.
Right.
I mean, even when I got married, some people didn't like me.
Yeah. Some Germans held that against you?
Yeah, not so much.
Not too much.
Not so much, because I would say, hey, we all are in this mess. And perhaps now it will get better. Because that's when you are down, that's all you want, is get out of it. Right. And start a new life. That's all I can say.
I think that's a very good attitude. Because, you know, for people who hold grudges like that, that can follow them around for their whole lives, and it doesn't really do them any good.
Yeah. No, that I never did.
Yeah.
Even today yet.
Yeah.
You know, when something goes wrong, I accept it.
Can you talk a little bit about how your family moved? A lot of Germans were moving west to run away from the Russians, and after your house was destroyed, you had no place to stay in Dresden. How did your family move across Germany?
Yeah, the first few days, we went over to the garden.
Okay.
We had a garden.
I don't think I have the garden picture. We had a garden at your house?
No, not at the house. On top of the hill.
Oh, okay.
So
nearby Dresden?
Yeah,
okay.
We had to go up on the Schwebebahn.
Okay.
It was what do you call it?
A park or?
No, it was like a wagon.
Okay.
That would be covered covered up, and we would go up.
It would crank it up, okay.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we went up to the garden.
Okay.
And we stayed there for a week.
Okay, you just lived outside and...
Well, there was a little, we call it like a cottage.
Okay.
So we stayed in there.
Okay.
But it was cold.
Mm-hmm. In February.
and no water.
Okay.
And no water.
What did you drink to survive?
Yeah, we had to...
whatever you could.
Yeah, you know, I still had my bicycle.
Uh-huh.
So I took the bicycle and put these buckets on the front,
mm-hmm.
and I pushed it up the hill where I have to go to get the water.
Okay.
And what happened? Somebody stole my bicycle. Oh, and here I was coming out. Then I had to take the buckets and walk perhaps 2 miles. Oh. You know, just to get that home.
Yeah.
There was no more home.
Right, the place where you lived.
Where I lived, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And how many people were in that area, in that garden?
In the garden, about, we were 5, 6, 7.
Okay, so just your immediate family. There wasn't a lot of refugees there?
No.
Okay.
No. But we went next door.
Okay.
That house was still standing.
Okay.
Because according to this, there was no damage
mm-hmm.
in Rushwitz.
Okay.
There was the church.
Right. The
church took a hit.
Okay.
And right across the street from where we lived
mm-hmm.
was the demolishing of the church.
Is this the church that they just rebuilt?
No.
Or is that a different church?
That was the church in the city.
Okay.
That was, you know, Frauenkirche. That
okay.
was a big monster.
I have a picture of that church. This is the church that was destroyed, or at least partially.
This is the Frauenkirche.
Right, and they just this year they completed repairing it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was now they had. I was still there
mm-hmm.
this year,
mm-hmm.
But I didn't go to a celebration. You know.
Yeah.
But this is the church that was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny part was that they could not, the bombs
mm-hmm.
could not destroy it.
Uh-huh.
They couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened, little by little, it was sandstone.
Uh-huh.
And little by little, it crumbled.
Yeah, in the weather and things.
In the weather, and then all of a sudden the whole building collapsed.
Okay. So this is not long after the bombing, before it started to collapse.
Yeah, that was about, I would say, two months that it was down.
Down, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you left the garden, where did your family move from there?
There was a soldier. And we got befriended, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he said to me, "What are you going to do?"
This is a German soldier?
He was a German soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "You can stay there."
Mm-hmm.
It was February.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been another month and it would have been ice cold.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no heat in that little cottage, you know. So then he was the one that took us out.
Okay.
He took us home. We walked together with him, all 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
We walked until he found a truck.
Mm-hmm.
A truck that would be sitting there and pull the people out of Dresden.
Okay.
And then we would go west.
Okay.
And until we found a train
Mm-hmm.
that is going to Bavaria.
Okay.
That's as far as he went with us.
Okay.
And then he said, I have to go because I have Urlaub auf Ehrenort.
Mm-hmm.
That means he had to go to his
His unit?
unit.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we said, okay, if you help us on the train,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go to Bavaria.
Okay.
That's how we get to Bavaria.
Okay.
And then he pushed us through the windows. It was really amazing how good people can be.
Right, in these conditions.
In conditions like that,
Mm-hmm.
you would never believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so then he went to his outfit.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I think, Landshut, somewhere around there.
Mhm.
And we wanted to go like to Berchtesgaden.
Mhm.
So that's when we switched trains and we went to Berchtesgaden.
Okay.
And that's where we stayed.
Okay. Kind of, you moved there and stayed there.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit before about your job that you had in Bavaria when you met your husband.
Oh.
And what was happening in Bavaria with you when you met your husband?
Well, I was working for the Americans.
Okay.
And I had gone to the Dolmetscher Schule. Interpreter school.
Oh, interpreter school? Okay.
Interpreter school in Hauptstadt.
Okay.
And so, I was able, because I went to that school,
Mm-hmm.
I could at least translate.
Okay.
I mean, like, I would talk to you,
Uh-huh.
and I know that you couldn't speak German,
Uh-huh.
and I would say, well, let's speak it that way,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was interpreter.
Mm-hmm. Speak German to English?
In German, and that's when I worked for the Americans.
Okay.
Yeah. And I met him then,
Okay.
and that was on top of a mountain.
And you talked a little bit to me the first time we talked too about some of the conditions even in Bavaria, about how difficult it was to get food and vegetables and so forth.
Oh yeah, mostly we had to stand in line,
Mhm.
like in queues, especially when it came to horse meat.
Yeah, you get horse meat. Mm-hmm.
So we had to stand in line from 3 in the morning
Mm-hmm.
until they opened up at 8 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got perhaps, and we had these ration cards,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like 50 grams or 100 grams.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were 5 people,
Mm-hmm.
so we could get our ration cards and like 500 grams
Mm-hmm.
for regular meat.
Okay.
And then when you wanted horse meat,
Uh-huh.
you would get 3 times as much.
Okay.
So that's what we mostly do. One week we would stand in line for 3 hours, until 3 in the morning.
Really?
And then we had to wait until 5 or 8 in the morning.
How long did this rationing go on? When did that start to get really
long time.
years and years?
Yeah.
Was it still going on when you came to America?
No.
No, it stopped by then.
So that was like when it was 1939, 1940, 1941, 42.
Yeah.
And then actually that's as far as I,
Mm-hmm.
met my husband, and then everything changed.
Right. That happens when you meet your husband.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what year did you get married to? 53. Okay. So you were in Germany that whole time. Did you stay in Germany after you married your husband?
I had to stay. He went back to the States.
Okay.
Because this was a law.
Okay.
That when you marry, the husband has to go back to the United States.
Okay.
You know, and I had to stay back in Germany. But so I did.
Do you remember very much about how people felt about being under the American occupation? Did they hate the Americans? Did they feel relieved?
No, I cannot say that.
Okay.
There might have been, out of the group of 100, perhaps there were 5 that were really hateful. But in general, there was no hard feeling.
Had the people kind of seen at that point what the Nazi regime had been, and had been been glad to be rid of it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because then they found out that Hitler did nothing but lie. You know. Yeah, he did the Autobahn. He made that
the highway.
The highway. Okay, he was proud. You know, that he would do something like this.
Right.
But otherwise, there was no big happiness.
Yeah, no benefit.
No benefits for us.
Right. You talked to me a little bit too about how that experience has made you kind of distrustful of politicians generally. There's being wronged by a politician, and then there's really being wronged by a politician. Yeah. So how has that changed your view about politics, having experienced that?
Well, I kept it to myself. I mean, I guess that's what we ever did.
Right.
We kept our mouths shut. It didn't matter, you know, if it was the Germans, but we knew we could not speak up. We had to say, okay, I don't like it. Yeah. But
there's nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do. I want to live. You know, and because we just went through quite a bit, and we were glad that it finally was over. And now, if that was right or wrong, we didn't care.
Were you generally optimistic about the future, even though the country was in bad shape at that time? Did you think the future would be good?
Yeah. I mean, especially our family.
Okay.
So I mean, there was nothing that we would say it couldn't happen. It would happen.
During the Hitler days, did your family ever talk about politics in the privacy of their home, or were they didn't want to talk about it at all?
Right. No, we didn't talk about it at all.
Not even in the privacy of your own kitchen at supper time or anything?
Because my father was already in Russia.
Oh, okay, so he had to go into the war.
He was already in the war.
Okay.
And as long as he was in the war, he didn't know what happened to him. So we could not say, our father died and he doesn't live anymore.
He was just lost in Russia.
He was just lost, and that's it, and he had to
accept so many people
it.
in the Eastern Front, so many German soldiers were lost that way.
Yeah. So.
Okay, well that kind of brings your story from childhood all the way up through your marriage to your husband. I think it's about 20 after 7. If one of my friends over at the circuit desk could turn the lights on for us, I think we can take some questions from the group if you'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get the lights back up there again. There we go.
Oh. Now we better wake up.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Saller?
What about the Jews? Did you help the Jews during their times of life?
Did I help them?
Yeah.
Well, I let them live. You know.
Were they on the trains?
They were living next to us.
You talked about a pharmacy across the street.
Right when we were in Auschwitz. where I was born, right next to us was the pharmacy. And this was a Jewish family. We didn't even know, we didn't know the difference. The girl was about my age, and we lived house to house. And I lived here in my living room, and perhaps, like here, like the end of the table.
That's how close their house was.
That was where the doctors were, the pharmacy. And then on the Kristallnacht.
Yeah, Kristallnacht was when the SA went around and torched torched all the Jewish businesses and synagogues.
So they put fire onto
Onto the pharmacy?
Onto the building. Yeah.
The pharmacy building?
Yeah, but not much. You know, but it gave them a hint of what they tried to do, what the SR mentioned.
Did they go out of business at that point, or did they continue after Kristallnacht?
They left. Okay. They fled.
Okay.
And I just saw that little girl going out the back door, and then they went through the yard, and they hit the other street. And this is where they must have found somebody with a truck or with a car that took them, and they went to America.
Okay. Okay.
So that's,
so you know that they got away?
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew that. We knew that.
Okay.
Did they have to wear something to distinguish themselves from everyone?
Yeah. Some of them wore little stars. You know, they were like this on your lapel.
Right.
And so we knew that they were Jewish.
But there was a slow, my understanding about this policy, I mean, it was a bit by bit. You first had to identify yourself as a Jew. Then you couldn't own a business. Then if you did own a business, they took it away from you. And then they took your voting rights away. I mean, it was steady by steady a withdrawal.
And you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, did you have any idea what was going on during the early 40s with the various extermination camps? There was no talk on the side.
No talk, and what would happen to these people? You know,
because they all didn't go to America.
no, she's realizing. Yeah. And you also have to remember that at this point she's about 12 years old.
Yeah, no, I was saying no.
But we had a few people, Jewish people, at the next block.
Yeah.
And they used to have little stars.
But they didn't wear those little stars. I mean, my point was, in the late 20s and early 30s, before Hitler, they weren't they were Jews, but they didn't have to be self-identification.
No.
Yeah,
So
it's a labeling thing.
But we knew that they were Jewish.
Yeah.
Right.
Somehow.
Yeah.
But we didn't care. I mean, we were neighbors.
Yeah.
That's how close we were.
You told me early on that you found out about what had happened to the Jews only after the war was over and during the Nuremberg trials?
Yeah, well,
and seeing the news.
I didn't pay much attention to that either.
You were trying to eat and survive.
Yeah, but I mean, if they would have been killed or chopped their heads off right then, that would have been fine.
The Nuremberg trials?
Yeah. So, like, if they are convicted, and if they are proven, to be guilty, they shouldn't. Okay, this is my opinion. So I should say, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do it in the first place.
Right.
So it's
very
difficult.
Yeah. Do you remember there being any problems with shame or a sense of guilt amongst the German people after all this was over? And how did you get through that, or how did you get over that?
Well, okay, I can say that my family, my mother, we were alone then.
Yeah,
and my grandmother and my aunt, we were there by ourselves. And we knew that what happened with Hitler, and the way he treated us, that this was not right. And so when the Americans came closer from the west,
Right.
we were happy. You know, this is all what we were waiting for.
You felt freed as well.
Yeah. And with my husband, everything was fine.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I grew up in
Yeah.
Okay.
And during this time, my mother, best friend actually, was Hilda Haller. She was 2 weeks old. My grandfather was a teacher in high school and Greek in Germany. He was teaching. And he, during the time, my mother would say, "Can I play with Hilda Haller?" So my grandfather said, "Sure, you should, but don't do it in the open. Play in the woods. Go in the woods. Don't do it open." And just to show how, in a small town, how that works. Hilda Haller, with her whole family, went to Venezuela, Caracas. And at the same time, at the Jewish cemetery, in Germany, the cemetery, people take care of the cemetery, put flowers up. It doesn't matter which denomination. Anyway, in the Jewish cemetery, my grandfather was taking care of the Jewish cemetery. So then there was in northern Bavaria, where we were living, a small town in Bavaria. And he got in trouble because somebody from the student, people used student school, was telling to the our leader, and then went all the way to Munich, got that, and he got serious trouble. But because people, they just say like, why are you so stupid? You know, like that's what the people would do him. And then, but and then another occasion, my grandfather gave in school, they had to write an essay, about, and it was about some famous person. Well, one student thought he was very smart. He wrote about Hitler, so my grandfather failed him. But I mean, so it was like on a whole, if you did something, my grandfather, I would say he was close to getting serious trouble.
Yeah, my mother too.
Very close.
My mother too.
What kinds of things did she do that was getting her close to trouble?
Well, she was saying when the woman comes with the Lensman cutter, with the little ration cards, there was like a block needle. And she would come and bring us the Lensman cutter. So then she said to me, my mother said to her, she said, "And now you want to tell me that we are still winning the war? You know?" She told that
The block
leader. Oh boy, and she said, "Mrs. Bittrich, you better watch out, because there are people here that don't like that kind of talk." You know?
Defeat talk.
Yeah. So that's why I say you always had to be who you talk to. Are you sure you can talk to these people? And sometimes my mother had a business, you know. We had to be careful. Otherwise she would have lost the business. So
now when Dresden was destroyed, what was it like where all towns like Würzburg or Freiburg, all towns which had absolutely no meaning, which were destroyed? Was it under the command of, I think Churchill once destroyed?
yeah, but it was just Dresden.
Was it just Dresden?
Yeah.
At that time?
There might have been some smaller
There
towns
were
that night.
some other ones like Magdeburg, Leipzig, and Berlin. That was all that 1 week ahead of time. And so they were hitting these little, Berlin was a big town. Did you want to say something?
No. It was important.
I thought this did.
Because when the Russians, at the end of the war,
yeah,
the Americans were close to the Berlin to take it, but they had made an agreement that the Russians would take it, and that the Russians were taking over. And Stalin wanted to catch Hitler, made a big show out of that.
But it didn't come about. I don't think so.
No, it didn't come about because
it wouldn't have come to that point, you know.
Also,
what was the goal of destroying Dresden? Was it because of its rail center? Was that the importance of Dresden?
That would have been the only thing.
I mean, usually like they concentrated on areas where they were producing a lot of things, munitions or something.
Oh yeah, no, this was not true about Dresden. It was just a little non-description city. We had a lot of, how do you say,
businesses and factories.
Businesses and, now what do you call it, art. The art was written like this. I mean, you know, that was, Dresden was famous for, is, you know, not the ammunition, because and the soldiers there were a few soldiers outside the city, you know, like I don't know how many. I was never a soldier, so I wouldn't know. But it wasn't. In order to hit Dresden, it had to be complete. There was, for them to start something, it had to be fulfilled. And that's when they said they are going to bomb the living daylights out of it. That's what the English said, you know, that
the total war.
The total war, and that's what happened. But on the other hand, it was, you could not say that Dresden was so down on the bottom that we wouldn't know what to do anymore. We still knew that we were losing, while Hitler and this other
the government,
they were believed like governors. You know, that is, we are winning the war. And my mother said, no, we are not winning the war. You know, that's when she almost got into concentration camp.
Yeah. And you'll notice on the map too that Dresden is in the far east of the country, and the bombing raids, as you would expect, from Britain started on the west and inched its way across the country, and Dresden is about what was left before you left Germany.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, and it was a long flight from Britain all the way to Dresden and back again. So they had to have pretty much complete air superiority over the whole entire country before they could reach that far out and bomb it. And a lot of the things that I've read too, the Dresdeners did not believe they would ever be bombed. Is that true?
Yeah, it is.
They thought they were kind of special and that it was like Paris, where you know, it was a cultural center.
Churchill had an aunt living in Germany, in Bavaria, in Dresden.
In Dresden.
And that went in the newspaper. What's his name? Churchill has an aunt living here in Dresden, and that is why we kind of, nothing is going to happen to us. But then a few days later.
And the only bomb shelter you had was in that train station. There weren't bomb shelters around the city like there were in a lot of the other larger cities.
There might have been, but not many.
Yeah.
Not.
Just small ones maybe.
Yeah. Well, all we had was in the houses, down in the basement. This is what they call Luftschutzkeller. You know?
Well, they had signs, every house had a sign where you could say, if something happens, there's a door that's where you go in. I saw those signs still right after the war.
They were still there.
Where did Hitler go? Did they get this house?
Hitler was in Berlin.
So they bombed him too.
Well, they tried.
He was in the
His
basement.
house.
Yeah. By this point, well, not quite, or he was pretty close to being down in his bunker at that
Somebody?
point. Yes.
At what point in time did your family realize that the war was not going well and that you were actually losing the war?
Well, I think that was 1943, 44.
Prior to the Normandy invasion.
Yeah, it was prior.
Okay.
That's when my mother said, "We are losing this war." You know, when it happened, I remember now, when we went into Russia and Stalingrad could not be touched by the German army. They were not strong enough to get into Stalingrad. And so they went, what did I want to come out with?
There's a siege.
That was kind of the beginning of the end that you thought.
Yeah, so there was, how do you say?
You knew that was when things were bad, was when Stalingrad.
Right.
Well, the retreat in Germany with the Stalingrad, that was probably the biggest, like you said, the biggest.
Stalingrad was the biggest battle the Germans lost.
Was there any in the media, of German media, was there anything? I mean, was this just like a routine defeat? Did they even mention defeat, or was it just ignored? Did you ever?
I wouldn't say it was fully ignored. But they
had to have soldiers talking, soldiers coming back saying.
No, not this
there
way.
There were no soldiers talking about that we got beat.
No, or they would have been shot.
Well, okay, but I mean in private, that's what I'm talking about, in private.
No, it would have been towards even, see, there was a winter, a very bad winter.
Russian winters, Napoleon.
And so here was the few German people, soldiers, standing. It was a siege.
Yeah.
The siege of
Stalingrad.
Stalingrad. So they couldn't do anything. And finally, I think we didn't find out about that. But that the guys, they said, the soldiers said to themselves, "Hey, let's get out of here."
Yeah.
You know, and then they had no more ammunition. They couldn't. What in the world could they do?
Russia. Well, my understanding is the Russians are also falling back and scorching the earth. So basically, when Hitler retreated, there was nothing to live on with the existing armies.
Yeah.
So they were big.
So, but anyway, they left, and that was the first time that we realized the war has to come to an end. Okay.
Give me an idea of what your life was like in about 1938, prior to the invasion of Poland.
1938.
It was after Hitler came to power, but before the war.
Yeah, but that was when Hitler came into Poland.
No, 39. 39. But 38, what about 38? What was your life?
Yeah.
What was your life before that?
Before that, I went to school. That's about it.
It seemed pretty normal at that time to you. As a child, you couldn't see any difference from before.
No. You know, when you're 10 years old, you know, you're glad that you can go to school and that you made good grades. It's the same trouble that you have then.
Right.
It's what most of the young people do now.
There was no election, my understanding, in 37, 38. But if there was an election, Hitler used the Reichstag fire to get rid of the election.
Oh,
but if Hitler would Hitler still be democratically elected in 38? If they had a vote, if he had a plebiscite, say, you know, he probably would have still been voted in, right?
Yeah. There would have been probably a fair fight.
Yeah, I'm just saying he was still popular.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. See, I don't even.
The government stuff at that stage.
I ignore that.
Yeah.
Because all I know from Hitler is that when he had a radio speech that everybody was quiet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We had to listen.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Now, my father, at that time, he was still home. What could we do? You know? He listened. He had no idea from politics.
Yeah.
Because he was always...
He brought the country out of depression, too.
Yeah.
He was much quicker out of depression, yeah.
Hitler helped a lot of people to get jobs again.
There was a joke, I remember in a history class, it was a joke, that the Germans who died before 1939 were considered Hitler their savior. This is before 1939.
Yeah.
Because he brought the country out of depression much quicker than the West.
Yeah, and then how long did it take
that's different.
after the World War I to get to the place where the government, and this was, what was the government at that time?
Before the war?
Before Hitler came.
The Weimar Republic.
Weimar Republic.
Who was that?
The Weimar Republic.
Yeah, Weimar Republic.
Yeah, right. It was the center trying to run the government unsuccessfully.
Actually what it was, he had so many small parties.
Right.
And it's what they're trying to do right now. Germany is a big mess right now.
Yeah, I
It
know.
is. I mean, no, honestly, because
Well, Hitler was democratically elected. He was he was a parliamentary system.
But he was thumping people on the head.
Yeah,
He had his own army.
in 1933, you had like in a small town where I grew up, it's close to Frankfurt, about 50 miles south of Frankfurt. There was a regular election, and different parties had their candidates. And the Nazi party was the minority, so there was another fight. The party they just one day the next just said it doesn't count, and they put the people in. So it was
fixed.
They got 33% of the parliamentary vote in an election.
On the regular.
He got elected. He didn't get elected chancellor. The guy Hindenburg, they elected was chancellor, and then he died. They thought.
No. So what I said is like this was locally. I'm not saying it was in a local town where they had the representative, and it was another fight, meaning that it was like didn't count. So. Can you imagine when they had this kind of power and could do this? Then what are you going to do? If you just tell them like it doesn't count.
I can control it.
Everybody was running their private armies in those days, and the SA was going around cracking people on the head if they voted the wrong way. So I don't think that, by American standard, is a free election.
Germany wasn't organized as a country. It was a number of small states before 1848.
Right.
Which is
and even then, different states had some had semi-communist governments, and some of them had rightist governments.
Parliamentary time. I mean, you're probably back.
Did you have another question? Did you guys
Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell me about, you said there were 300 people in the basement that you were hiding in. I was just wondering.
Could you speak a little louder?
He said he was talking about the 300 people that you had in the basement after the bombing.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what kind of a basement would it be to accommodate that many people?
Yeah, how big of a house or what kind of building was it to hold that many people?
It was, let's see, perhaps the front over there. That's where 300 people had to be in.
So they were standing shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, and the people were crying, and the children were crying, and the old people were crying, and it was just, it drove you nuts. You know?
How long did you stay like that?
A week.
Was there any special needs, like burn victims, like anything like that?
Yeah. Did you have injured people at all, or?
Injured?
Yeah, down there, or was everybody pretty well?
No, I think we were all in good shape. We knew what was going on, and we felt we had to go through, and that is it. We tried to, we prayed a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sure you did.
Boy, and then when we went, like I was 17 then, and I had to go up to the 4th floor to take the buckets with water and try to get the flames out from the fourth floor. And what can you do with a little bucket?
Yeah.
You know? And so, but we did our best, and that's all we could do.
Sir?
How many people died in this bombing in Dresden?
Yeah. But that is a very difficult thing to answer.
Yeah.
Because
it's controversial about how many.
Yes, it is. See, actually, there were 35,000 people in Dresden. The population was 35,000 in Dresden. But then came all the refugees from the east. And every day there came, I don't know how many trains came with children, with women, and old men, because there were no more young ones. They all went on the front. So then they claim after the air raid, and that was just a guess, that it was 350,000 that died.
I've read in various sources preparing that some say 100,000, some said 24,000. I don't know that it can really be known because of the number of refugees and because of the health problems of having so many of the bodies lying around that they, instead of counting them, they were just trying to get rid of them.
Well, you know what they did. I know. In Dresden is a marketplace, a big marketplace. And that is where the people threw all the dead people on a big pile. And I don't know, I hadn't seen them. But they burned the whole shebang. And they think what I did, I was up in Rushwitz by our garden, and then we smelled the smell from the dead people that were coming up to the hills.
A book that I read recently said that the city government got concentration camp personnel from Treblinka to come and advise them how to get rid of a lot of bodies in a hurry. And
I don't think they had time to come.
No.
No, I don't think so, because they were burning 4 days after the air raid. They had stacked the dead people in the middle of the city, and they had put the fire on, and then it was just smoldering and smoldering. And we were in the garden, yes. And then we saw it, we smelled it. It was crap.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
On a lighter note, do you have any children?
Oh yeah. I have 6.
And 3 of them live in the United States and 3 in Germany, you told me.
Yeah, right. So, and everybody turned out fine.
It feels like I should say the end.
There's one over there. Grandson. Yeah. So.
Go ahead.
Pardon me?
Does somebody else have a question?
No, I just wanted to say.
Oh, Mrs. Saller's daughter and grandson are over in the corner there. Proof that everything came out all right. Yes, sir.
What can we do to make sure that...
that it doesn't happen again?
Yes.
Yeah.
I felt you might say that, and I don't feel like to ask any more questions safely.
Yeah, but I don't think the way the world is today, and when you see it, that one country tells the other country how to live, and if you don't, well, then we have a war with you. You know, and all this leads, in my opinion, leads to nothing. And I mean, you might be altogether different. But I don't believe in war. I think it is a shame. And I think that's the only time where I can say I was ashamed that the young people, especially when you have your own children, and you, well, good thing I just had one that had to go to Vietnam. What else is it?
Korea.
No.
Iraq.
No. Where was
Desert Storm.
Desert Storm?
the Desert Storm? No, I didn't have anything.
Okay.
They all came back.
Yeah.
But one was in Thailand, in Laos, and he was in the Air Force. He had been fighting just with the gas. You know, the one that have to...
Agent Orange?
Or napalm?
Yeah, napalm too.
That's kind of ironic.
Yeah. So, and the son, he had to do that. He had to fill up these planes.
Okay, okay. He loaded the plane.
Reloading it.
Okay.
So he did that he went in there for 4 years, you know. So I know it was not very pleasant.
Yeah. When you've had an experience such as yourself, that close up to war, I'm sure you probably have one of the most realistic views of what war is like.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want any other young person like you, okay?
Relatively young person.
Well, anyway, that they can live a decent life, you know, and sit here and we talk, and even if I don't take talk the right thing, you know, that some people might not like it, but this is the way the world is. We cannot please everybody. So we just have to pray that, especially the family, and this is what I am concerned about, that my family, I'm an egoist. So, but otherwise...
Let's make this the last one. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I don't personally feel it's safe in America to ask certain questions. But this isn't really a question. I want to thank Germany for standing up to some of the problems that have been going on in the world right now. They stood up and said, we don't like that.
Yes, I thought so too. I thought, what was that? Schrader. Schrader was the guy.
Yeah, there was a young man who was in Korea, and I saw him on some news program, and he was German, and he was working with the UN to try to work with the disarmament of North Korea. And the interviewer asked him why he was doing it, and he said it was his responsibility as a German to work towards world peace. And he felt this, and he was younger than I am, you know, probably in his early 30s, late 20s. And even though he had nothing to do with the war, he still felt a responsibility as a German to work towards world peace.
And don't send, and you know, Germany is such a small place. And we don't have that many kids.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes here when you say, how many kids do you have? 6 or 8 or 10, you know? That's a lot of children.
Yeah.
But in Germany, there are not that many families that have more than, let's say, 3 children. It's more or less like a Chinese, you know?
Yeah.
Where they say you only can have 1 child, 2 child, and then break out.
Okay,
So,
I think we're going to wrap it up on that.
yeah, okay.
And I hope everyone has enjoyed our program today. I'd like to...